Good morning and welcome to my channel. I've had several requests for a video on how I make my sauerkraut. Now, I'm no authority on fermenting foods, but I will share with you how I make my sauerkraut, and maybe you'll be inspired to make your own, and who knows, maybe I'll do something that you find helpful. So let's get going. I've got all of my equipment sanitized, work surfaces sanitized, and I'll be shredding into this bus tub. I'll be using the slaw board with my cut gloves. If you don't have a slaw board, you can use just a knife and a cutting board. I've got about 17 pounds of cabbage today, so yeah, I'm making a pretty good sized batch. I've got my jars washed and ready to go. I might need one or two more. We'll see how the cabbage packs in there. And there are my weights and my ferment lids. If you're interested in learning how to ferment vegetables, I recommend you get a good book on fermenting. There's some science behind fermenting, and to be successful, you need to know what you're doing. So a good book is highly recommended. I got my slaw board at Runnings here in Rapid City at the end of the season. It was on sale for $30. It's obviously not a kitchen tool I use every day, but because I do make a fair amount of sauerkraut, this is a tool I really appreciate. And this is my setup, so I'm just about ready to get going. Oh, and I should also mention the YouTube channel, Clean Food Living. Adriana does this channel. She's passionate about fermented foods. She really knows what she's talking about. Her educational videos are just outstanding. So yes, Clean Food Living, wonderful resource. And I will link her website in the description box of this video. Okay, let's get going. Step one is to shred the cabbage. Okay, it took 15 minutes to shred those 7 heads of cabbage. You'll see why I really like that slaw board. Now, I need to weigh my cabbage because I like to calculate the amount of salt I use by weight. There are some people that make sauerkraut and they will do it by taste. And I've done that before, and it's not repeatable. So I like to use the weight method rather than tasting or measuring the salt. I will weigh my cabbage, my shredded cabbage, and then I will calculate 2% of that weight for the amount of salt that I use. So I need to know what this weighs. I do know that my bowls weigh approximately a pound a piece. So, and I started with 17 pounds of cabbage, 7 heads. And this bowl weighs 9 pounds. I've got 9 pounds of cabbage here. And I've got 7 pounds of cabbage here. So I've got 16 pounds of shredded cabbage. Oh boy, that looks like a lot of cabbage. You know, on second thought, I think I need to leave some of this in this bowl for now. I've got my weight. Now you're going to be amazed at how this cabbage shrinks. Okay, so I need 145 grams of salt for these 16 pounds of cabbage. And I use good salt, good sea salt. It has no anti-caking agent. The amount of salt you use is really critical when you're fermenting because it creates an environment that is good for the bacteria that you want to grow, for lactic bacteria, and it creates an environment that is not good for the bad bacteria. So if you don't have the salt level right, your cabbage will just sit there and either rot or it'll just be too salty and probably rot. So it's critical that you have the right amount of salt, which is exactly why I like to weigh it versus measuring it or just tasting it. So here we go. Next step is to get the salt on this cabbage. And my hands are clean, so I'm just going to give it a gentle stir. Okay, and now let's add this one. Okay, the remaining salt. I'm just going to gently stir that. And now I'm going to let this rest. This is a pretty big batch. It might take longer than half an hour, but I'll start with half an hour and we'll come back and check on it. So I'm just going to cover it to keep the dust off of it. We'll be back in half an hour. Okay, it's been 45 minutes since we salted the cabbage. And boy, look at that. Can you see how much it's shrunk? And I haven't really even worked this cabbage yet, massaged it yet, so it's going to shrink quite a bit more. And you can see it's kind of glossy. The salt is causing the cabbage to release its moisture. And we want as much of this natural moisture to come out of the cabbage and create its own brine. You probably can't see it on the camera, but I already have liquid developing at the bottom of my tub, which is very desirable. That's what we want. So I'm going to massage this cabbage and squeezing it and kind of breaking the cell structure in the cabbage a bit. That will cause it to release more moisture. And now you can see it's already lost even more of its volume. Sauerkraut is fun. There's many different recipes you can try, adding different herbs and vegetables, carrots and onions, bell peppers, hot peppers, garlic, different herbs. Today I'm making what I call a naked sauerkraut. It's just cabbage and salt. And I'm also going to do a version that has apples, an apple kraut. I really like the idea of the apple kraut because apples are a prebiotic that we're combining with the probiotic of the cabbage, the lacto-fermented cabbage. So you really end up with a powerhouse of good stuff for your gut with the apple kraut. So I'm going to be making a little bit of that. It's really difficult for me to determine how many jars of kraut I'm going to get. I always struggle with that. But okay, so I've massaged that thoroughly. And look, it's more than halfway down my tub now. Isn't that amazing? And I'm going to give this another rest period of about a half an hour. And I'll get all set up to pack it in the jars. Clean hands. Oh my. Okay, we are definitely ready to start jarring our sauerkraut. A really nice brine going on. I hope you can see that. You see the liquid in the bottom here. And as I squeeze it, you can see the cabbage is releasing more. So again, for really informative and instructional videos, Clean Food Living with Adriana is the ticket. But I'll share a little bit of what I know. The sauerkraut ferments in an anaerobic environment, which is an environment without oxygen. So this packing process, I'm going to use my canning funnel. It makes it easier to get this going, or at least cleaner. So back to the packing process. So this is the first step in helping get to that anaerobic environment that we want for the good bacteria. The bad bacteria or the pathogens can't survive in an anaerobic environment. So what we're trying to achieve here is an anaerobic environment that is good for the good bacteria, the lactobacteria, and will starve out or kill the bad bacteria. The first jar I'm going to do is going to be the naked kraut. It's just cabbage and salt. It's very simple, very flavorful. I've tried many other recipes from all the way from hot peppers to a variety of herbs. But I gotta tell you, the original recipe with just salt and caraway or the naked kraut with just salt are my favorites. I just recently started making the apple kraut and that's quickly becoming a favorite too. Boy, that's really yummy. Now, the liquid that this sauerkraut's going to make as it ferments is really valuable. It is definitely full, chock full of probiotics. So I don't want to lose any of the liquid. So I don't pack my jars all the way full because as the CO2 gases release, they will push the cabbage up and it will push out liquid if there's not enough headspace. So I strive for, I give at least 3-4 inches. I know it looks like I won't need it, but as you get to see this process, you'll see why I need it. That was a hard lesson for me to learn, not packing my jars too full. This jar that I'm doing, I'm going to add the caraway, and I'll just layer it in. I've already ground it, so just sprinkle a little bit in there. You can put the caraway seed in whole, but I feel like you get better flavor if you grind it. This tool, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, this is the cabbage pounder or packer, I believe they call it. More caraway. Now I will top these jars off with additional liquid. You have to have the cabbage or whatever vegetable you're fermenting, below the brine level for that anaerobic environment. So I'm going to set these over here while I do the jar of apple kraut so I don't spill them, but these will come back over and we will add more liquid after we get all the jars packed. These leaves that we took off the cabbage before we grated it will help to keep the shredded cabbage below the brine. I like the way that's looking. Glass weight will also help keep everything below the brine. And then a ferment lid also helps to create that anaerobic environment. So as the CO2 starts to develop in the next 2 to 3 days, it'll bubble up and it'll push out the oxygen, which will starve the bad pathogens, and the good bacteria will start fermenting our cabbage, making it develop into a probiotic-rich sauerkraut. So that's the first jar. It's important that you take your time on this step. It will save you a little headache down the road. So don't get in a hurry, just take your time. After you have your jars packed, go ahead and label them so you can accurately monitor the fermenting process. Around days 5 to 7, you notice that the bubbling activity has subsided. The lactobacillus bacteria is now present, the probiotic development is thriving, and the pH level will continue to drop. A pH level of 4.5 or below is safe, and a pH level between 3 and 4 is very robust and flavorful. This stage can last anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, and I'll let this batch continue to ferment for a couple more weeks.